The next session of the Galactic Council opened with the usual pride and arrogance. Delegates filled the chamber with banners, with colors, with the voices of empires that stretched across thousands of worlds. They fought over territory, over taxes, over pride. But beneath all the noise, something had changed. A shadow hung over the chamber. The young delegate's question from the last meeting still echoed in every mind. Why does Earth never come? The empty chair gleamed in silence, its black alloy frame catching the light of the hall. It stood untouched, but no one could stop staring at it. The laughter of the last session had grown weaker. The mockery was quieter now. Something in the air was colder. In the dining halls of the station, whispers spread like a virus. A Krell, diplomat with metallic skin, leaned close to a companion and asked, "If Earth is weak, why has no empire claimed their world?" The other delegate shifted uneasily. Because every probe sent there never returned. Others whispered darker things. A Thalri scholar from the Outer Rim whispered of fleets lost in silence. "My people sent 3 scout ships to map the Sol system centuries ago. They vanished. No wreckage, no signal, nothing." The more they whispered, the more fear grew. What had once been a joke was becoming something else, something no one wanted to admit aloud. Meanwhile, in the chamber itself, bold voices tried to turn the fear into laughter again. A Xeran general stood tall, his mandibles clacking. "The humans do not come because they are dead. Their world is ash and their fleets are dust. Look at the chair. It is a symbol of emptiness." But his words did not echo the way he wanted. Delegates nodded, but nervously. Even the high speaker's eyes flicked toward the empty seat with unease. That night, far from the council chamber, smaller species gathered in secret rooms, hidden from the eyes of the great empires. The young delegate who had dared to ask the question was there, his eyes wide with worry. "They are hiding something," he whispered. "The council does not know the truth. Earth is not gone. If it were, the chair would have been removed long. Ergo, someone keeps it there for a reason." The others nodded, afraid to speak too loudly, because in their hearts they felt the same. Out in deep space, far beyond the borders of the council, a convoy of raider ships moved towards Sol. They were smugglers and scavengers, mercenaries hired by a minor power to test Earth's silence. They laughed as their ships sped into the dark. "We will strip the blue planet clean," their leader promised, but the galaxy never saw them again. No distress call, no battle record, no debris. The convoy simply vanished, and yet fragments of rumor leaked back. A lone pirate escape pod, drifting and damaged, was intercepted at the edge of council space. The being inside was broken, its mind shattered by terror. Before it died, it whispered one word over and over: "Eyes, eyes, eyes in the dark." The report was quietly buried by the council, locked away in secret archives. But whispers could not be contained. The story spread, growing wilder with each telling. Some said Earth had fleets of invisible warships. Others said humanity had weapons that shattered minds before ships even fired. The empty chair in the chamber no longer looked like a joke. It looked like a warning. At the next council meeting, silence lingered longer than usual. Delegates glanced at each other, waiting for someone to break the tension. No one mocked Earth this time. No one dared point at the empty seat. Instead, they argued quickly, nervously, about lesser matters, eager to end the session and leave the chamber. When the high speaker struck his staff to dismiss them, a chill passed through the room, for in that silence everyone realized the same truth. The emptiness was not weakness. The silence was not absence. It was patience. Patience of something vast, something hidden, something waiting. And deep in the void, far from their eyes, humanity's fleets listened. Every whisper, every probe, every scout that dared to approach Earth, they saw it all. Their ships were cloaked in silence, their weapons powered but never fired. They waited, watching the council laugh, mock, and tremble. Inside the command deck of a massive human flagship, a captain spoke quietly to his crew. "They are starting to wonder," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp as steel. "Good, let them wonder. Fear is a stronger weapon than fire, and when the time comes, they will understand why the chair is empty." The ship's engines hummed in silence. fading back into the darkness where no alien eye could see, and in the council chamber, the empty chair remained, gleaming under the light as if daring the galaxy to keep asking the question no one wanted answered. The galaxy had always believed in numbers. Numbers of ships, numbers of weapons, numbers of soldiers. Strength was counted in fleets and firepower, in how much light a single empire could throw across the stars. But now, those numbers were betraying them. Fleets were disappearing. At first it was only whispers. A small armada from the Zith coalition had been sent toward Sol. They were ordered to patrol, to probe Earth's defenses, to prove to the galaxy that the humans were nothing more than ghosts. But when weeks turned into months and not a single ship returned, the Council grew uneasy. The Zith commander who had authorized the mission tried to laugh it off. "Perhaps they defected," he said. "Perhaps they were swallowed by a black hole." The chamber chuckled, but the sound was thin, hollow. Everyone knew the truth they dared not speak. And then it happened again. This time it was not smugglers or pirates. This time it was a proud fleet from the Vorin Dominion, an empire of warriors who never feared battle. 30 ships, each armed, with plasma cannons and shield arrays, entered Sol space with banners high and threats on their lips. They sent a final transmission before crossing the system's edge. "We come to test the silence of Earth." Those were their last words. The Council waited for news. Some expected to see images of Earth burning, others expected wreckage to float back into space. But what came instead was nothing, nothing at all. 30 ships had entered. Not one came back. Even the wreckage was gone, no signal, no distress. No trace. It was as if the fleet had been swallowed by a mouth of shadows. Fear began to spread through the Council. Delegates whispered behind closed doors. "This is not war," one said. "This is something else. This is erasure." Still, some mocked. A Zyran general stood in the chamber once again, mandibles clicking with false courage. "If fleets vanish near Earth, it is because Earth hides in shadows. They cannot win in open war. They strike from cowardice, from darkness. They are not warriors, they are ghosts." But even as he spoke, his voice trembled, for the empty chair stood in the middle of the chamber, shining in silence, as if listening. The whispers turned into rumors, rumors into fear. Some said Earth had weapons that could crush ships with invisible energy. Others said humans commanded fleets so large they blotted out the stars, fleets that only revealed themselves when prey dared to enter their domain. The most fearful whispers spoke of something worse, that humans did not destroy fleets but took them, that the missing ships were not gone but captured, their crews locked away in silence, never to be seen again. And then a story broke the galaxy. A single escape pod was found drifting near the border systems, weak and broken. Inside was a Vorin pilot, eyes wide with terror, skin pale, voice shattered into madness. His words were scattered, but fragments were clear. They were waiting for us. We thought Sol was empty, but the stars themselves moved. Shadows with engines, lightless hulls, they surrounded us before we even knew. And then, the silence. We fired, but no sound came back. They were everywhere, they saw us, every ship, every thought, eyes in the dark. The pilot died soon after, but his words spread like fire. Whole sectors whispered of eyes in the dark. The phrase burned across star systems, carried from station to station until even the highest empires trembled to hear it. The Galactic Council tried to silence the story. They said it was madness, the rambling of a broken mind. But no one believed them. No one dared speak it aloud in the chamber, but in every hall, every dining room, every barrack, the whispers grew louder, eyes in the dark, watching, waiting, always waiting. And still the chair stood empty. Still Earth never came. Still no voice from humanity rose in the chamber. One night, the young delegate who had first dared to ask about Earth walked past the council hall, alone. He paused at the doors and stared at the empty seat. His voice shook as he whispered to himself, "They are not weak. They are not gone. They are listening, and when they rise." He shivered, unable to finish. Far beyond the galaxy's borders, deep in the void of Sol space, a human fleet drifted in perfect silence. Hundreds of warships, each cloaked in shadows, engines quiet, weapons primed. Their hulls were blacker than the void, their shapes invisible against the stars. And on every bridge human eyes watched. They saw every fleet, every probe, every empire that mocked their silence, and they waited. For the day, the galaxy's laughter would end in screams. The Galactic Council chamber was the grandest hall in the known universe. It stretched across a city-sized station, with pillars of crystal light rising into the ceiling, banners from every empire hanging in proud display, and voices echoing in 1,000 languages that blended into a single storm of noise. Every empire wanted to be seen, every delegate wanted to be heard, and every seat in the chamber was a symbol of power. But one seat was different. Near the center, not too close, to the High Council throne yet not hidden at the edge, stood a chair made of black alloy. Upon its back was a silver insignia, an image of Earth, a simple blue and white sphere etched in cold steel. No guard stood beside it, no emissary ever came to claim it. The chair was always there, untouched, unoccupied, empty. At first, the other species had found it curious. They had whispered, "Why leave a chair for a world that never sends anyone?" But as centuries passed, curiosity turned into mockery. The Kethar delegates would snarl and slap their tails on the floor, hissing, "Stone-world cowards, too afraid to join us." The Krell dynasties would laugh with their metallic voices, calling Earth the Ghost Empire. Even the younger races began to treat it as a joke. One delegate, during a speech, once pointed to the empty chair and said, "Why should we listen to silence? If Earth does not speak, then Earth does not matter." The chamber had roared with laughter, and yet the chair remained. Some whispered Earth was too weak, too primitive, a backwater world that still relied on kinetic weapons, on ships built for survival instead of dominance. Others said Earth had already fallen long ago, destroyed by its own wars, and the empty chair was nothing more than a relic of courtesy. But no one truly knew. On the day of the Nine Empire Assembly, the chamber was full. Leaders argued about trade, routes, pirate fleets, and border wars. Voices thundered, threats were thrown, and old enemies nearly came to blows. But then, as the chamber calmed, a young delegate from a small border species rose to speak. He was not important, not powerful, but his question was simple, and it silenced the hall. "Why?" he asked, pointing toward the black alloy chair. "Does Earth never come?" The chamber froze. For a long moment, no one answered. Eyes turned toward the chair, as if it might suddenly come alive. The question was dangerous because it forced the council to admit something none of them liked. They had no idea. The High Speaker of the council cleared his throat, his wings twitching nervously. "Earth chooses silence," he said carefully. "Perhaps they do not think our matters are worth their time." Laughter broke out again. Delegates mocked the answer, called Earth arrogant, called them weak. But in the shadows, whispers began to spread. The smaller species leaned closer to each other, speaking in low tones. "If Earth fell, why does no one invade it? If they are weak, why does no one dare claim their world? Why has every attempt to send scouts ended without return?" The High Speaker slammed his staff and ended the meeting, but the question remained, burning in the silence of every mind. Far away, in the blackness of deep space, the truth waited. Human warships drifted in the cold void, hidden beyond the edge of detection. They were silent, without signal or beacon. Their hulls were coated in shadow-black metal, their weapons never fired in public, their power never displayed. Yet they were there, guarding, waiting, always watching. To the galaxy, Earth's chair looked empty. To the humans, the galaxy's chamber was nothing but a stage filled with children pretending at power. And deep in the command deck of one such silent warship, a human officer spoke softly to his crew. "They keep laughing," he said, staring at the holographic projection of the council chamber. "But one day they will stop, and on that day they will finally understand why we never sit in that chair." The ship drifted back into the shadows, vanishing from every sensor. In the council chamber, the empty seat remained, untouched, as voices rose again in arrogance and laughter. But somewhere every delegate who had heard the young alien's question felt a chill crawl along their spine. Because the truth was no longer easy to ignore. Why was Earth silent? Why did no one dare invade? Why did no one ever return? And what would happen the day humanity decided the chair should not stay empty? The chamber's light dimmed as the meeting ended, and the seat of Earth gleamed faintly under the glow. It looked empty to the galaxy, but in the endless dark of space, it was already filled by fleets so vast, so silent, and so patient that the galaxy had never even realized it was surrounded, and so the galaxy laughed at the empty chair. But the silence of Earth was not weakness, it was warning. The chamber of the Galactic Council had always been a place of noise, laughter, anger, debates that shook the walls with voices from every corner of the stars. But now, silence had begun to creep into its heart. Delegates who once mocked Earth, with bold words, now lowered their voices when they spoke of Sol. Their eyes flicked nervously toward the one chair that had never been filled. That empty seat had become a shadow that loomed over every meeting. Banners of mighty empires fluttered proudly across the chamber, but all of them seemed dim beside that unoccupied place, marked with Earth's insignia. Every delegate tried not to look at it, yet no one could resist. And whenever their eyes met, the silent symbol of Earth, their voices faltered. The fleets had vanished. Everyone knew it. Armadas had been sent towards Sol, confident in their strength, and none had returned. The Zith coalition, the Vorin dominion, even small raiding clans, gone, erased from the stars without a trace. And then came the words of the broken pilot, whispering of eyes in the dark. No council could stand tall against that kind of fear. When the chamber met again, the High Speaker raised his voice. His robes shimmered under the hall's lights. But his hands trembled. "We cannot allow fear to rule us," he said, though his eyes betrayed his own terror. "Humanity has not spoken, has not acted within this chamber. We must assume their fleets, if they exist, are defensive. Their silence is their answer." But the words were weak and everyone knew it. A delegate from the insectoid Krath Empire slammed his claws against the table. "Defensive," he hissed. 30 ships from the Dominion vanished. That is not defense, that is consumption. You call that silence? I call it a warning. The hall erupted in noise, accusations, shouts, fear disguised as anger. Some demanded Earth be punished. Others called for more fleets to probe Sol. Yet more voices than ever cried for restraint. Do not provoke them. They do not speak because they do not need to. They are not asking for peace. They are showing us what happens when we laugh. The young delegate who had once asked why Earth's seat was empty sat quietly at the edge of the chamber. His hands were tight on the edge of his chair, his heart pounding as he listened to voices rise and fall. He felt the weight of the truth pressing on him like the stars themselves. Humanity's silence was not weakness, it was power. And then something happened that froze the chamber. A transmission arrived, not from Earth, not from Sol, but from the border systems, where an Allied patrol had been watching the edges of human space. Their message was played aloud before the council. The delegates leaned forward, eyes wide, as a trembling alien voice filled the hall. They were waiting. We could not see them, until it was too late. Shadows, dozens, no hundreds. They surrounded us without light, without sound. Every sensor failed. Every shield died. They did not fire, but we knew. We knew they could end us at any moment. And then, they let us go. They let us live. But only to deliver this message. The chamber went utterly still. The words were repeated again by the trembling voice. Do not enter Sol again. We see you, we always see you. When the message ended, silence crushed the chamber. Not one delegate spoke. Not one dared even breathe too loudly. The High Speaker's face turned pale. His lips moved, but no sound came. The insectoid Krath delegate, so bold a moment ago, sank back into his chair, mandibles trembling. Across the hall, the laughter that had once mocked humanity was gone, buried under the weight of terror. The empty chair seemed to grow heavier, darker, as though the humans themselves were sitting there unseen, listening. Whispers began to spread even inside the chamber. Why do they not take the seat? Why do they refuse to speak? And then the most chilling thought entered the minds of the council. What if Earth had never wanted the seat? What if the humans had never considered themselves equals with the rest of the galaxy at all? What if, all along, they had only been watching, waiting in silence for the moment the stars forgot their place? The young delegate swallowed hard. He thought of the broken pilot. He thought of the words whispered across 100 systems, eyes in the dark. He stared at the empty chair and finally understood. Earth's silence was not an absence. It was a presence, a warning that no one in the galaxy dared to speak aloud. And far beyond, in the black void near Sol, the human fleets drifted still. Warships, with hulls darker than shadow, eyes burning like cold fire, watching every move of the galaxy. Silent, patient, unseen, but ready. For the day, silence would end. The Galactic Council chamber no longer roared with noise. It whispered, trembled, and shook under the weight of a fear no one wanted to name. The empty chair of Earth had once been a joke, mocked for its arrogance and silence, but now it loomed like a spectre. Delegates who once laughed at humanity now avoided even looking at that seat. Then the silence broke, not with a council debate, not with an alien speech, but with a sound that had never echoed in the chamber before. A voice. Cold, human. The sound did not come through the doors. It came through the walls. It came from every communicator, every console, every glowing crystal that powered the chamber. The entire hall froze, their hearts thundering in their chests as the voice of Earth spoke for the first time. Your fleets came to our skies. Your soldiers crossed our borders. You mocked our silence. You thought it weakness. The delegates stared at each other, their eyes wide, their hands gripping their seats in terror. No transmission was visible. No source could be traced. The voice came from everywhere, as though the humans themselves had wrapped the council chamber in their unseen grasp. We did not answer, the voice continued, low and steady, because we did not need to. You mistook patience for fear. You mistook silence for absence. The Krath delegate, his claws trembling, tried to rise and shout, but no sound came from his throat. His mandibles clattered in terror as the voice pressed on. We saw your fleets. We watched them burn in our skies. And when your survivors crawled away, we let them go so they could deliver our message. But you did not listen. So now we speak. The lights in the council chamber flickered. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the floor. Some delegates clutched their robes. Others whispered prayers to their gods. But no one dared to leave. The young delegate who had once asked about Earth's empty chair sat frozen, his pulse hammering in his ears. He realized then what no one wanted to admit. This voice was not an introduction. It was a warning. You call us absent, the human voice said, but we are already here. We are in your systems. We are in your stars. We are in your shadows. The council believed Earth's silence meant nothing. It was your mistake, a mistake you will never make again. And then in the chamber itself, the empty chair moved. Every eye snapped to it. For countless years it had stood untouched, a symbol of Earth's refusal. But now, before the council's terrified gaze, the chair creaked as if someone unseen had taken their seat. Delegates screamed. Some rose in panic, others stumbled backward. The chamber guards drew weapons, their armor gleaming in fear, but no target revealed itself. The chair sat still, heavy, occupied by nothing they could see, and then the voice spoke again, lower, colder than before. We do not want your seat. We do not want your counsel. We do not want your approval. But you will remember this. Earth's silence was mercy. Mercy has ended. The words dropped into the chamber like blades of ice. No one spoke. No one breathed. The only sound was the faint hum of the system still hijacked by humanity. Then the lights went out. For a full minute, the council chamber was swallowed by pitch darkness. Delegates clutched each other, hearts racing, their fear louder than any words. When the lights returned, the chair was empty again, untouched as though nothing had happened. But every delegate knew. Earth had spoken. The silence was over, and in the void beyond their stars, fleets stirred, warships without lights, drifting like ghosts, their cannons armed, their targets already chosen. Humanity had finally broken its silence, and the galaxy trembled, waiting for the storm. The galaxy waited in fear. News of the council chamber incident spread like wildfire. Whole systems whispered about the voice that spoke without warning, about the empty chair that moved as if touched by invisible hands. Armies prepared, governments panicked, and yet Earth did not move. That silence was worse than war. The delegates argued day and night, demanding explanations, searching for hidden transmitters, accusing one another of trickery. But deep inside, every one of them knew the truth. Only Earth could have done it, only the humans. And then it happened. It was not a battle, it was not an invasion. It was something far worse. One by one, across dozens of star systems, alien fleets vanished. Entire armadas gone. No distress call, no warning, no wreckage. Sensors reported ships simply erased. 1,000,000 tons of war metal disappearing like sand in the wind. At first the council thought it was some new weapon, but then came the broadcasts. Across every channel, in every tongue, a single image appeared. The captured alien commander, the same one who had once stood proud, who had marched armies across worlds. He was chained, broken and silent, seated at the foot of a massive human warship's throne. The voice returned. Calm, steady, human. You believed our silence meant weakness. You thought our absence was fear. You thought your chains could bind us, but you have seen nothing. The camera panned. Behind the prisoner rose a ship so vast it filled the stars. Black steel that swallowed light, cannons larger than cities, engines that hummed like thunder. It dwarfed everything the council had ever built. This was not just a warship. It was a floating world, a fortress of humanity hidden until now. Gasps and screams echoed across council halls and streets alike. Citizens wept. Generals dropped to their knees. Never before had such a ship been seen. The humans had not built a fleet. They had built a judgment, and the voice spoke again. Earth never wanted war. Earth never wanted power. But you brought war to our skies, and you mocked us while we stayed our hand. No more. The alien prisoner lifted his head, his eyes hollow with terror. When he finally spoke, his voice was broken, trembling. They are not silent because they fear us. They are silent because they are waiting for the moment they decide we are no longer worth sparing. His words spread faster than fire. The council chamber fell into chaos. Some screamed for peace, others for surrender. A few, driven mad by fear, demanded total war, but no one listened. Because even as they argued, the humans proved their message. Above 20 council worlds, shadows blotted out the stars. Human warships, silent and black, emerged from the void. They did not fire, they did not speak, they only waited. Every alien eye stared upward, and in that moment the galaxy understood. The empty chair was never weakness, it was a warning. Humanity had been watching, preparing, building, and now the silence was over. The last words of the human transmission echoed across the stars, leaving every empire trembling. We do not want your thrones. We do not want your banners. We do not want your counsel. But if you ever threaten us again, if you ever test our silence, you will not live to regret it. This is your only warning. The signal cut. In every world, every hall, every ship, there was no laughter left. No mockery, no pride, only fear. Because the galaxy finally understood the truth. Humanity's silence was never absence, it was power. And now that power had spoken,